Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to show you two features of Excel that I tend to use quite often. One of them I think is very well known, and that's VLOOKUP. The other one though, I find that a lot of people don't realize is a feature of Excel, and that's a shame because it's extraordinarily useful. Something that I use quite often when I work in Google Sheets. But I think Excel's implementation of being able to import data from web pages is way better than what Google Sheets has to offer. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do both. We're going to import some data from a web page, and then we're going to use VLOOKUP to make that data a bit more easy to organize and find exactly what you're looking for. So what we're going to do is, this is not going to go horribly in depth, but this is going to be more an example of what you can do and how you would use these features. So the first thing we need to do is we need to find a table on the internet where we can actually go and find some good data. So I'm using this Wikipedia article, which is a list of countries by population. And there's a couple of tables on here. This one in particular is what I'm interested in. So we're going to use this one right here. So what I'm going to do is first is I'm going to copy the URL, and then I'm going to go over to my blank Excel workbook or spreadsheet, and I'm going to click on data. And I'm going to go and click import or get and transform data from web. So once we do that, it's going to ask us for the URL of the website. And notice there's a basic and advanced option. Right now, all we need to do is worry about the basic functionality. So we're going to click OK. If this is the first time you're doing it, Excel might ask you how you want to go get that data anonymously with an API, a number of other features. Anonymous tends to work for 99% of what I use it for. But in this case, it went and it grabbed the website. We can also make sure that we're looking at the correct website by clicking on the Web View tab. And yep, this is the one that we were looking at here. It's not giving us the best representation of it, but we get the idea. And here's the table that we want. Now, if you look here, this is actually really interesting. You have a representation of, which I guess you can really call the DOM, the document object model for this website. And if you notice, there's several tables on here. For example, if we click on table 0, it's this one right here, which isn't very useful. I believe the table that we actually want to use is table 1. So yep, this is it right here. This is the list of countries, the continent they're on, their population, and the delta change right here. So we're going to import this, but one of the things when I was going through kind of testing this feature out using this particular table was these numbers in here are currently recognized as text. And if we want to be able to do certain functions on them, for example, count if or average if, things of that nature, we need them to be numbers or integers. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is down here, there is a button called Transform Data. And when we click on Transform Data, Excel gives us sort of another mini version of an Excel spreadsheet that you can kind of work with. Now, what you could do here is you could go and click on these two columns. And if you notice here under data type, it says type text. You can switch this over to number, and that works pretty well, or just fine. But one of the things that I noticed is that if you go and use another feature, which is use first row as headers, and the little pop-up helper box here says promote the first row of this table into column headers. That this is also very useful, and when I click on it, it does just that for us. And if you notice here, these two columns are now represented as whole numbers. So just by doing that transformation on this table, it actually went ahead and converted these to numbers, which is extremely useful. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and load this into our spreadsheet, and you can do that simply by clicking on Close and Load, which I'm going to go ahead and do. And now we get a new worksheet in our Excel workbook. And here is the table that we saw in the Wikipedia page. And if you notice here, you get a little queries and connections log, and it tells us that 234 rows were loaded. And if we mouse over it, it gives us a little bit of information, which is fantastic. Notice right here, it says last refresh, 12:43 p.m. One of the Strengths and or weaknesses, depending on how you look at it, is as this data changes, so will the data in your spreadsheet. It's not necessarily static. So in some cases, people like that. In other cases, you might run into some problems. But I actually find that to be very useful because it updates my spreadsheet without me having to go through and manually change numbers. So we can get rid of this right now. So if you're doing a report, if you're just doing some research on populations of all the different countries, this is pretty useful. But we can make it easier to find the numbers that you're looking for. And we're going to use that, or we're going to do that using a feature called VLOOKUP. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select this cell, I4, and I want to make this a drop-down where we can go and select any one country listed in column A. And the way that I'm going to do that, I've selected that. I'm going to go into the Data ribbon. I'm going to click on Data Validation. And under Validation Criteria, I don't want any value. I want a list of values. And I want that source to be basically column A. A couple of ways you can do this. Probably one of the easiest ways is to go ahead and click on the first cell that you want. Then we can go ahead and click. So I basically held Shift Control in the down arrow, and it selected all of the populated cells in that row. I don't want the last one. I don't want world. So holding Shift and arrow up, I'm just going to move that one up so where it ends on Vatican City. So we have that. I can go ahead and just hit Enter. So now we have our source for the choices we want in that list. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So let's go back up to the top here. And if we click on this arrow, we now see all of the different countries, and we can go and select one. So I'm going to select China for right now. Actually, select China. And we're going to work with that. So in this next column, or rather next cell, J4, we're going to use VLOOKUP. So as you select the country, it will automatically show you the corresponding value in column D. And the way we're going to do this is using VLOOKUP or vertical lookup. Now, vertical lookup is extremely useful. A lot of people have heard of it. Not a lot of people have used it. And this is not going to be an exhaustive tutorial on how to use VLOOKUP. Rather, this is going to be an example of one way that you can use VLOOKUP. And it should be pretty functional because we're going to go through the steps. So, of course, anytime you're using a function in Excel, we're going to start with the equal sign, VLOOKUP. And of course, it gives us the criteria here. So we're going to use the lookup value. And in this case, our lookup value is going to be the value in I4. The table array. So this, we need to tell Excel basically what chunk of data does it need to look for the corresponding value. And in this case, the chunk of data is going to be from A2 all the way down to D234, I believe. So let's scroll down here. Of course, Excel is not blazing fast, but yep, here we go. So we're going to go down to D234. And let's go back up to the cell that we were working in. So A2 to D34, and you see it's highlighted red there. So we know that's the chunk we're going to be working with. The column index number. So if I pick China, Excel needs to know what the corresponding column is that I want displayed. And in this case, it's going to be column D, which is the fourth column over. So I'm going to go ahead and put the value 4. And then range lookup. So range lookup is a little difficult for me to explain, and it's something where I think we need to go a little bit more in depth about how to use VLOOKUP. What I have found, though, is if you put in the value false, you are going to get more accurate results. So we have VLOOKUP, we have the value, we have the range, we have the column index, and we're saying we want you to look for the specific corresponding value. So we click OK or click Enter or press Enter. And if we notice here, we have China, and the value is, if I can do this backwards, what is it? 1,427,647,786 is their population. I think one of the easy things to do here is let's actually go and let's make this a little bit more human readable. So I've selected all the values in that column. Let's put, there we go. Let's put some commas in there, and let's also get rid of these zeros after the decimal point. So now, if we go in here, and let's pick another one. Let's go ahead and look at the United States. What we get here is, probably also need to do this here, so there, and get rid of the zeros. So for the United States, 327,096,265, and that is, so let's try one more. The last one that we had was Vatican City, which I believe had something like 801 at the very bottom. We click on that. We have 801. So there you have it. In this very quick and dirty tutorial, I showed you how to import data from the internet, how to transform that data, how to clean it up, how to get it into a spreadsheet, and then how to use VLOOKUP to make it a little bit more easy to find exactly what you're looking for. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions about how I did this or any of the steps, maybe I glanced over a little too quickly, by all means, please feel free to put your question in the comments below. Thank you very much.